And then you have these technocrats, like you say, in positions of power. And Bill Gates talking up that whole AI thing, for example, recently, that, mostly humans won't be needed soon. We'll be able to just have a leisure time, and everything else will be done by AI, which, of course, is not the way it's going to be. That's not what they want. Depopulation is ultimately what they want. But then you've got Elon Musk and you've got Jeff Bezos and all these others. Look at the power they're wielding, and Larry Fink, and just these names that we all see up there, and these oligarchs now with billions and billions of dollars behind them, unelected and having huge amounts of power.
It's fascinating because so back in 2020, Gary Stearman, he had written an article for our magazine in November of 2020, and he brought up the question and just asked, people talk about looking for the Antichrist, and but according to the Bible, if you believe in a preacher of rapture, which not everybody does, but if you do, you won't see the Antichrist. But he said, but regardless of that, what we do know is in Daniel 7 that these 10 kings, so-called, come first on the scene. And he asked the question, and he wondered, you wonder, could these be technocrats? And so he asked me about it, and I said, Gary, I'm gonna look into this. And so I ended up looking into the Bible and kind of doing a deep dive, and coming to find out that it is interesting that when you look at the passages of Scripture in Revelation 17 and Daniel 7, Revelation 17 is quite clear. You have three characteristics of these 10 kings there, that they are they don't have a kingdom, so they're kings without a kingdom. That's a little bit odd, because generally a king that's the very definition. They have a geography, they have a land. So these are kings without a kingdom. Secondly, it says that they operate like kings or as kings, which is very specific. It's using a simile. So I think in terms of, if I say, hey, I have something like an apple in my hand, it means that it's not an apple. It's something like it. So the Bible says, again, they're kings without a kingdom. They are like kings, which means they're not like the normal kings. But secondly, it describes that they give their power and authority over to the beast and they make this agreement in Revelation 17:13 to rule with him for 1 hour. So as I was looking at this, I started looking at some of the lexical understandings of the Greek word basileus, and what it's the greatest lexicon that you have in the modern New Testament age, or in the age now for the New Testament, is called BDAG, BDAG. People can look it up. It's about $150 if you want to buy it. And but what it says in there is that the word basileus, that's often translated primarily as king, a king of a kingdom, also is known as one who yields, not as a king, someone who yields unusual and transcendent power. And I thought, okay, wow, look at this. So now you have the context saying that these figures are basically don't have a kingdom. They are like kings, but they also have unusual or transcendent power that they hand over to the beast, the Antichrist, at this time. And so I began to do some research, and what I was documenting during this time, this was probably around April, May of 2021, and what you found, and even now it's way more pronounced, is, let me give you one example. You look in the world and you say, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 500 years ago, the people that had the wealth were primarily governments. Governments had wealth, and they're the ones that were dictating and warring against one another. Well, now we're entering in a very unusual time where some of these wealthy technocrats who are, again, using technology, some of them are more wealthy than individual governments. Yeah. And so, for example, I'll just give you some stats and then we can talk, but you think about Elon Musk as an example. You mentioned him. In 2020, he was worth $29 billion. Okay, you think, oh, measly $29 billion. He wasn't the richest. He wasn't even the richest guy around. But over the next couple of years, all of these technocrats during that COVID season and the lockdowns, Jeff Bezos, of course, his wealth went straight up. They added over $7 trillion just in 2021 alone. And then what you see is as of January of 2025, so within 5 years, Elon Musk is now worth $420 billion. So he increased his wealth by $400 billion. No one's in that class anymore. And that's primarily because of his Tesla stock and market cap and stuff like that. But you look at all the things that he's involved with Starlink, he's involved with all the satellites, he's involved with Neuralink, with the brain thing, he's involved with SpaceX, now he's launching and other things. Of course, he has Tesla, he's got a boring company, he's got the open AI. So he is like the quintessential technocrat oligarch guy. And of course, so we're talking about this for years now, and then Trump gets elected, and who do you see at the front row of the inauguration?
Yeah.
All of these guys.
Yep.
So there was a little bit of vindication to say, could it be that what the Bible's describing is again, not literal kings with kingdoms, because it says they don't have kingdoms, but very influential, powerful, capable individuals who are giving all of their power and capability over to the Antichrist on that day to rule with him. And as we're watching, it sure looks like this is exactly what we're beholding.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you, another person on that list that isn't talked about so much, but has a lot of power and is a Trump backer and also actually has New Zealand citizenship, and that's Peter Thiel. He's another one of these big guys. And with Palantir, with the military software, AI stuff, the big deals between Palantir and the US government just recently. So he's another one of these people with enormous power. And I heard Elon Musk in an interview, and Ted Cruz asked him, who's the most intelligent person you've ever met or whatever. Musk is thinking in his head, and definitely one of them, he says, is Jeff Bezos. And so, these guys are supposedly in competition to each other on some things, but when it really comes down to it, nah, they're all on the same page.
Absolutely. And what we're watching is the advancement of their ideas. It's interesting, too, because one of the other figures that isn't known so much for wealth, but he is known to be tremendously influential in the 21st century, even going back to late, is Klaus Schwab. Yeah. And so you look at Klaus Schwab with the World Economic Forum and establishing that organization in 1971. So you think about 50 years, over 54 years now worth of influence, seeking to raise up their young global leaders program. Of course, as we know, Trudeau from Canada and so many of them are graduates of this program and being put out to accomplish their goal for globalism. Yeah. The second thing that Klaus Schwab is known for, and this is all in his book, The Great Reset, the Fourth Industrial Revolution. He says clearly, look, there's no way we can accomplish our goals without the use of technology. And he lists over 21 different types of technology that they want to see implemented in order to accomplish, again, their globalist agenda. So when you think about that as the pattern, and then you have these extremely, again, beyond imagination, wealthy individuals that are coming in, not just with wealth, but they're coming in connected with all of these various technologies, as we mentioned, quantum computing, artificial intelligence, robotics, vaccines. You look at Bill Gates, he's the largest private owner of farmland in the United States. All the things that he's involved with, prisons. It's just, their fingers are very, very broad, and they're using all of that in order to accomplish what it is what we see, the goals of the World Economic Forum and others. Yes,
and I know some people go, no, can't be, but Vladimir Putin was one of the first ones to graduate from Klaus Schwab's Young Global Leaders, but it was not called the Young Global Leaders, it had a different name then. And Schwab himself has basically proudly admitted that 2 or 3 years ago, just before the Ukraine invasion, but he specifically mentioned Vladimir Putin having gone through that. So that's one thing. I'm also thinking when you're talking about all the AI and robots and all that, and Elon Musk, I mean, look at this Optimus robot that I covered that recently in a video. It's staggering, you know, because Tesla's got the money and the backing and the ability to manufacture these things in bulk like no one else has. And so that's coming, and robots are going to play a huge role in this. Now, AI and that, I don't know, have you come across the fact that now there's computers with human brain cells integrated with silicon chips, and that's scary. And it's not just in theory now, they've actually got them, working computers, faster than a normal
Absolutely. Computer. Well, and this is what they're realizing is that, and we look at it and we're not surprised, they call this in the field biomimicry, where they're able to look and, for example, at a bird, and they'll be like, okay, well, let's look at a raptor and the way that its wings are designed. And let's try to mimic that as relates to airplane design or whatever. So as they look at this too, they look at the brain or cells and the ability for it, the information that the brain has, the amount of data. When you think about the stimulus of your eyes, your senses, or your ears, driving down the road at 100 miles an hour or you know, whatever, and your brain is able to process all of this incoming information so extremely fast. They're jealous of the ability of the brain as a computer. And so what they're also finding is that with DNA and other like digital information, memory storage systems, and also the brain is electrical. So it's really easy it's easy for us to conceptualize, but you see the stuff that Neuralink is doing and saying, look, we need to figure this out, because that is the key in order to translate, digital stuff here into the brain, and then the brain, its ability for storage capacity and quickness is very inspiring to them. And so if they want to master it, and when you start thinking about, and again, as you mentioned, they're using certain mice brain matter in order to store things, in order to figure out how it works and the transfer rates. It's pretty amazing what we're looking, but also scary at the same time.